Warning. The following podcast features views and opinions that are likely to trigger the extreme fanboys and fangirls who disagree with them. Listener discretion is advised.
The day has finally come. This is the episode that I initially even got the idea to do this whole podcast about, because I've been getting garbage for this opinion for 11 years now. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you caught last week's, a lot of new people coming on this season. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. But you're here just in time because I brought Josh Macuga with me.
What's up, buddy?
For today's episode, which is 2008's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
And the reason why I brought you here specifically was because maybe about a month ago, I saw that you tweeted it's something to the effect of, like, if I find one person who has something nice to say, like, I'm coming to your house with a baseball bat. I'm paraphrasing. But it was the hyperbole in said tweet was like, well, I gotta get in.
Listen, I don't like to hate on things.
Sure.
As you know, I'm not the negative guy. I pretty much like everything. I mean, my favorite movie is Bad Boys 2, right? So I'm not like exactly a film snob, if you will.
Sure.
But my favorite trilogy, and I'm saying that lightly now because when Bad Boys 3 comes out, I'm guessing that'll become my favorite trilogy.
The game will change,
yes.
Sure.
But my favorite trilogy, the first movie my parents took me to, and I should say my parents, I say my dad because my mom did not approve of this decision, but my dad, I was 7 years old, and my dad took me to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Okay.
And so he'd let me watch Temple of Doom, and he let me watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the cave was coming out in the theaters, and my dad and I were like, we're going to go see Last Crusade. And after Last Crusade, I was like, I don't think Indiana Jones can ever get any better. Like, this is the best thing ever. So, you know, you went 20 years in between movies, and if we've learned anything, is that the long hiatus of a classic, well-received movie is that rarely, if ever, is that 20-year layoff. Does it work? Like, does the magic return? Do you know what I'm saying? You look at movies like...
You know what? This isn't boding well for your Bad Boys 3 that was released 15 years ago.
I know. That's why I'm kind of worried about it, but it's obviously going to get a carte blanche pass, in my opinion. So it's hard. Like, look at things like Dumb and Dumber, Zoolander, you know, these long layoffs. But now those are comedies.
Comedy is always difficult.
Totally.
On the other hand, you got your Creed. You have your Star Wars The Force Awakens.
True.
So it's not impossible.
It's not.
But before we get too deep into this, let's first of all, if you are new, again, thank you for listening. But I want to be clear, the title of the show, Hot Takes with Billy Biz, that's the joke, because we're not going to sit here and scream at each other, because the reality of the situation is most people that I talk to, at least, fall on your side. Like, this is not just a movie they dislike. This is like a personal offense to a lot of people.
Totally.
And I don't feel that way. So I really actually want to find out why. So this is not movie fights. We're not trying to win points here. We're just talking. So everyone just calm down.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how this movie actually came to be.
Where's that bell?
Right. So let's talk about how this movie came to be. So they made, in the 70s, Lucas and Spielberg, they made a deal with Paramount to do 5 Indiana Jones movies.
Okay.
But in 1989, they did Last Crusade. Lucas felt, you know what, this is a pretty good one to end on.
Totally.
To the point where literally riding off in the sunset is the last thing we see.
Yeah.
Then, of course, they went off and made the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Which was a very underrated TV show.
Great
I thought it was
TV
great.
show.
Yes.
And they even got Harrison Ford to come in for a little cameo, which is always fun. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on Hulu or Amazon Prime.
Is it really?
Yeah,
oh, man, I got to check it.
You guys got to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Then Lucas kind of had this idea. So really, I don't think a lot of people realize like how big of a turning point for the next 20, 30 years of what would come, not just with Indiana Jones, but with Star Wars from Young Indiana Jones, because that's where he realized I can do a lot of things with CGI and special effects that I didn't realize I could do. This is when he gets the idea for Indiana Jones should be in the 50s in a B movie with aliens as the plot device. So this goes all the way back to the 90s where this idea came. Then comes a little movie in the summer of 1996 called Independence Day, which came out of nowhere, and Spielberg said, it's been done. The alien invasion movie, we're not going to top that. I don't want to do it.
And I'm with him on that one because Independence Day is glorious.
It's great.
That movie still holds up. I don't care. I mean, It is in my opinion, it is the summer blockbuster. Somebody goes like, name a summer blockbuster. I go Independence Day every time. That's my summer blockbuster.
It's still like you say Independence Day and you remember exactly that summer.
Totally.
You remember going to see it.
Yep.
And I get it. It was hard to, you
said 96?
1996.
Yeah.
It would be a long time before we saw like an alien invasion movie because they didn't want to do that same story again.
Yeah.
Then a couple years down the road, Lucas convinces them saying, okay, it's not extraterrestrials, they're interdimensional beings, which was based off of superstring theory, which is some science math thing that I don't understand.
I'm not in it.
And that's when they got the idea of using the crystal skulls as kind of the MacGuffin of this one. I didn't know this, but even M. Night Shyamalan wrote a pass in 2002, but
really
just couldn't live up to. He claims it was difficult to get Spielberg, Lucas, and Harrison Ford to all congeal. It's
Shocker.
Like, are you sure it wasn't
Yeah.
you? Who knows? Then Frank Darabont came on, and that was the one. He wrote Indiana Jones and the City of the Gods. Now, this is interesting. This was set in the 50s as well,
Okay.
but this was ex-Nazis pursuing Indiana Jones, and this was Spielberg's idea based on real-life figures who protected Nazi war criminals. Lucas didn't really like it that much, and they're like, thanks, but no thanks. Because oddly enough, this Indiana Jones movies, it's always been, it has to be
Nazis.
Yes, but it has to be 50-50. If Spielberg or Lucas, if one of them vetoes, it's not happening.
Really?
Which is very interesting because...
Can you imagine if government worked like that?
Right? A lot of times you'll see interviews now where Spielberg or Lucas will be like, yeah, I didn't really want to do it, but George really wanted to, or Steven wanted this, so we just did it.
Yeah.
That's when, around 2004, they brought in David Koepp, who had worked
Great
with
writer.
Spielberg before. They changed the name to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Koepp ended up being the script that they went with. They brought in Lawrence Kasdan, who a lot of you know from Empire Strikes Back, and now I think, was it Rogue One, Solo? One of those Star Wars movies.
Rogue One, yeah.
He came in and helped with some of the quote-unquote love dialogue, because as we know, Lucas's movies need help with that a lot.
All of Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
So going in to May of 2008, by the way, May of 2008, summer of 2008, stacked.
Okay.
Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Dark Knight, Tropic Thunder, Indiana Jones, Speed Racer, Step Brothers, all of these movies just like all hitting at the same time. But Indiana Jones was the first one that kicked off the summer. You said your dad took you in 1989.
Yeah.
So now, here we are. We're
2008.
almost 20 years removed. We're 19 years past it.
Yeah.
Josh Macuga walking into the Theater of Crystal Skull that day.
All right.
What were your feelings?
Let me set the stage here for you, Bill, if I may. Fresh off the boat, if you will, to Los Angeles, I made a couple of friends, and we decided to go to see Indiana Jones: The Crystal Skull opening weekend matinee on a Friday.
Okay.
Right. We went to the Grove here in LA. Went to a nice lunch at the Cheesecake Factory, and I get Billy. I was so excited. It's been 20 years since I saw a new Indiana Jones movie. This is on the level of excitement of The Force Awakens for those diehard Star Wars fans. Right. My favorite trilogy. Harrison Ford back on the screen. In my opinion, his best performance is Indiana Jones. I know all the Han Solo people are like, you're an idiot. I love him as Indiana Jones. I mean, I told my parents I wanted a bullwhip since the time I was like 7 years old because I wanted to be Indiana Jones. Walk in with a couple of buddies, sat down and ingested, I guess you could say, what was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And at every turn, I thought to myself, it can't get that much worse. It'll come back around. Billy, I walked out of the Grove there, and for those people that don't live in Los Angeles, the Grove has this nice, beautiful entryway sort of thing. It's carpeted. There's now a bar. There wasn't a bar at the time, but there's a set of stairs, like a grand staircase. And I walked over the stairs and I sat down and I put my head in my hands. And I was so heartbroken. I didn't even start working in the movie in our industry yet, right? There really wasn't YouTube yet. Sure. I wasn't a movie reviewer. I wasn't with the schmoes. I wasn't doing anything. I was just a young actor, host, stand-up comedian that was just loved Indiana Jones and wanted to go to an Indiana Jones summer blockbuster movie and walk out going dun 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 dun. Mom, send my bullwhip, right? I sat down on those stairs, and my buddy was like, "You all right, man?" I was like, "I don't think so, man." I'm like kind of heartbroken at how bad that movie was. It hurt me to my soul, and I swore to myself I see it on TV now, and I get like a PTSD of what I witnessed in that movie theater that day. I will not turn on that movie.
Okay.
I refuse to acknowledge that as part of Indiana Jones canon. I will retcon back to Last Crusade because Crystal Skull just really tore me apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
And
hard.
I know, and it's such a silly thing. Like a movie can hurt you like that, but that was like my childhood was, and people are like, oh, your reboot's gonna ruin your childhood. What? No, like that was my movie. That was my thing with my
Right.
dad. We watched Indiana Jones. I wanted to be an archeologist for a while, and then I found out you had to go to school forever, and you really just were like looking at bones and rocks.
It's
You weren't
so
actually.
boring.
It's so boring. You're never gonna be Indiana Jones. You're not shooting
You're gonna be
Nazis.
like Ross Geller.
Yeah, correct. You are 100% Ross Geller. And I felt like I had been so let down by the men that created my childhood.
So, okay. Usually I go like point by point the things that I like, but I kind of want to do this one a little bit differently
Okay.
because whether you signed up for this or not, you are the conduit of what I'm going to say the people because
Okay.
I'm looking at the Rotten Tomato score and this was my recollection.
This is mind blowing because we were
Right.
looking at the Rotten Tomato score like a week ago.
78% fresh, 53% audience score.
Okay.
So
And that's rotten.
That's, I mean, yes. There's a garbage with what looks like vomit coming out. of
Okay,
it.
okay, got
So
it.
I'm gonna assume, but still, 50%. That means half the people liked it,
Half and half.
them didn't.
Yes.
But I want to address something right off the bat because to my personal knowledge, and it could date back further, but there's a phrase that was born. There's a couple phrases that were born from Crystal Skull.
Okay.
One of them I think is ridiculous, and one of them truly offends me and angers me to my core.
Oh, no.
And that is when people say, this movie, this blank, this whatever, raped my childhood.
Okay.
I think if you use rape my childhood, please unfollow me. Please, like,
I will never use that word.
that is a terrible.
No,
first of all,
no,
it's just
no.
like very offensive to actual
People,
victims
yes.
of like
Yes.
sexual violence.
Yes.
But also, your childhood is very much intact.
Yes, totally.
The Indiana Jones trilogy or the Star Wars trilogy,
Yep.
in some cases, still exists for you. There's a quote that I love to use a lot that John Lennon used when the Beatles broke up. He's like, I don't understand why people are so broken up. The albums are still there. You can go back. You can reminisce. They aren't taken away.
Totally.
So yes, while this is probably not a lot of people's favorite addition to the franchise,
Yeah.
I personally just don't understand the concept of this retroactively ruining memories that you already have of something great.
Okay, so you're going at my point, and maybe I'm going
But
a
you
bit
are the people,
extreme,
so-
but I was the people,
Right.
right? I'm not saying what I'm getting at here is like, because I was so excited,
Right.
and because I love Indiana Jones so much,
Right.
and this movie was so disappointing,
Okay.
it really left a bad taste in my mouth.
For just Indiana Jones in general.
And no, you know what? It didn't ruin the franchise. It just really hurt my heart.
Okay,
That they
that's fair.
made such a bad movie. Had
Sure.
it been like an average movie,
Right.
and you know the Rotten Tomato score for the critics to give it 80%, I would have never thought that. And for half the people to like it, half the people to fresh it and rotten it, whatever. That doesn't, I guess, surprise me because probably hasn't been a lot of people to go and be like, I'm going to go to Crystal Skull today and I'm giving it the fresh thing, right? But what I will say is that it just like I was so disappointed. Okay, here's the perfect thing. You know
Sure.
when you'd get in trouble as a kid and your mom was like, the shame you're feeling right now is worse than any punishment I can give you. When in reality, that's BS.
Right.
The punishment that you gave me is way, way worse. I feel like I got the punishment and the disappointment. Like my mom was so bummed at me and grounded me for 2 weeks because this wasn't my Indiana Jones. It really wasn't. And maybe, you know what, dude? Maybe it was the script. Maybe it was the special effects. But maybe it was also Harrison Ford just mailing in his performance as Indiana Jones in this movie because I thought that. And maybe it's because he's just 20 plus years older and he's like in
Right.
his mid to late 60s in this
Right.
movie. And he's just not, he doesn't have the energy. We don't have the believability that a 60-year-old man can still punch out a Nazi in this situation.
Sure. And look, by the way, let me be very clear on my thesis statement regarding Crystal Skull. Not my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Yes.
My favorite will always be Raiders.
Okay.
I think Raiders might be a perfect movie.
I
might
don't
be
disagree.
The elusive perfect movie. I think I just don't dislike Crystal Skull. Now, sure, in terms of like special effects and CGI, you are not going to hear a word out of me defending the swinging monkey thing. I think that's stupid. I think that it looks bad even if it wasn't corny.
And the Bugs one too? The Bugs one.
Bugs one doesn't bother me
Okay.
as much. Here's the thing. Well, by the way, I'm pretty sure someone will actually fact check me, but I think the swinging monkey thing was a Spielberg
Really?
idea. It's not just like George Lucas is the only one with some Looney Tunes kind of inclinations.
Right.
Like Spielberg can go into it.
Totally.
But here's the thing. I said initially there's two phrases that came out that were born from this movie that I hate. One of them is "raped my childhood." Please just stop using it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's terrible and it's factually untrue.
Yes.
And the other one...
Subjectively and objectively untrue.
Untrue. Completely.
Yes. Yeah.
The other one that I'm just like... was Nuke the Fridge.
Yeah.
Nuke the Fridge, I think that's where, when you start with Indiana Jones, and the Crystal Skull, a lot of people, the first thing they'll say, man, is like, dude, the fridge, the Nuke fridge. To my response, which is, if 4 movies in, you are now doubting the logistics and believability of an Indiana Jones stunt, I don't know how to help you. It's no dumber to me than jumping out of a plane with a raft in said movie where a man grabs heart out of another man's chest and it is beating and the other guy is alive. But no, nuking a fridge is just a bridge too far for you. That I don't like, and it's not so much that, look, if you
Do you know what it is too? When that scene happened, I was like, that was pretty cool.
everyone thought it was cool at the time.
And then
At the
all of a sudden,
time.
everybody starts insulting the fridge. I'm like, I think you guys are forgetting a lot of other things in this movie that weren't good. The nuke in the fridge part was kind of badass.
Look, it was perfectly in line with the ridiculousness of holding on to a submarine for like 4.5 day trip that would have been in the first one. It's the same as surviving an apocalyptic opening of a Covenant.
Yes.
It's just one of the ridiculous things that makes Indiana Jones fun.
Yeah.
So to that, I ask you, if that's not something that sticks in your craw, let's start, instead of me listing off the things I like, I'd rather address the things that really get to you about it.
Yeah. Okay. So the problem for me is that the plot, they put too much of a supernatural vibe into it. And I always thought that Indiana Jones, like, he's not tracing down the supernatural. He's not hunting down the sci-fi aspect of it. He's hunting down relics. And there weren't enough, like, there wasn't, because each one, okay, Temple of Doom aside, even though Temple of Doom is kind of an exit from Raiders and Last Crusade, because he's not fighting Nazis, he's over in India, whatever. There's still like a religious relic to it. Those stones are part of like a religion that keep the village together, all that kind of stuff, right? And you're fighting your Ark of the Covenant in the first one, and you're getting the Holy Grail in the third one. The Crystal Skull was not like a religious relic. I wanted more of like something that we had that was urban legend, perhaps like some form of like a Rosetta Stone, or some form of like the Shroud of Turin or something like that, or some part of Jesus's cave, or some blood, or something, like almost like
that's in the movie though. It's the idea that he's like, kid, these things don't exist. He's chasing nothing, and then the fact that Oxley found it, that's the cool part. Like that to me is quintessential Indiana Jones. You're at the blackboard saying, guys, don't waste your time, this is just a fairy tale, and then saying like, but no, it does exist. To me, I feel like the Crystal Skull fits in perfectly.
Okay, but we don't have like any part in the Bible where they're like, there's a skull. Like,
it has to be biblical related.
Well, all like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail are biblically related, so it's something that somebody's been chasing forever. That like we know about. There's so many other things that we could have used that again are part of the consciousness, almost like the Fountain of Youth, which is the Holy Grail and Holy Grail. But like there is some part of it because, all right, talk about another one of our favorite movies that not many people like. Okay,
Sure.
The Phantom.
Great movie.
Great movie.
Amazing.
I don't care what anybody says. It is one of the most underrated superhero movies of all time.
Indiana Jones in a superhero costume.
Which is what we got.
Right. Amazing.
It's incredible. That movie has skulls, but those skulls are almost more believable and fitting to the movie than the Crystal Skull is in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
I guess the reason why I think this is an odd hang-up for me is, A, crystal skulls are real. We don't know how they were made.
Yeah.
That exists. It's historical.
Okay.
And B, they did... now, I'll give you this. They say it in kind of a throwaway line, but this was their interpretation. He's like, I believe that where they were going was what was fabled to be El Dorado, the city of gold with the technology. So it's like, again, like there's kind of your folklore
Sure.
with the MacGuffin that is based in a realistic, because there are crystal skulls.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, okay, I guess I of all the hangups I have of this movie, it's like the MacGuffin is, to me, that at least it's something I like. In going off your point, like then I think the stones in Temple, which by the way, I do not like Temple of Doom.
You don't
at all. I think
Really?
it's dark.
I
it's
do.
mean. It's
I kind of like Temple of Doom.
it's just so mean spirited, and it feels so out of place. I think Willie Scott is worse than Jar Jar in the history of
She's not
Lucasfilm
great.
characters.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's so out of character for Indy to be attracted to her, because he's attracted to strong, powerful women.
Right.
She is none of those things. But anyways, my point being, like,
Were you mean-spirited because she poured all the perfume on the elephant?
I mean, it's just like all the humor is like just, it's kind of, I call it like hangover humor, where it's like, it's always just mean and at the expense of someone, and it doesn't come from like, or it's like that Do They Do movie with Robert Downey Jr. where you're just like,
that movie was
oh,
terrible.
You're just like, this guy's just like a bully.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how, and you know, Spielberg and Lucas have said, hey, we were both in divorces. It was a dark time, and that movie shows it.
Shows it,
But
yeah.
those stones, to me, it's like that means something for the mythology of that movie, whereas like the Ark, the Holy Grail, and the skulls are something that exists in our life. So I feel like in essence, this is a return to form.
Do you think that maybe what I'm remembering from it is because and listen, I'll be a prequel apologist all day.
Star Wars?
I
like Star Wars prequels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Honestly, when I started working at Collider or with all, Christian and all them,
Right.
I had no idea that people didn't like the prequels until I met people like Mark and Christian. And Ken likes the prequels. He doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, they're Star Wars movies. I've never been the kind of guy who's like, man, I hate the prequels. I mean, Attack of the Clones is a little too much Hayden Christian and Natalie Portman in a field, just like
Agreed.
talking about love. But
Poorly.
poorly, not well. Like a 6-year-old writing a letter to his crush
Check
in the
yes.
first grade. Yeah, check yes. But I think what for me a lot that took away from a lot of Indiana Jones was the CGI. Like the amount of CGI that's in it, you don't need it. You don't. Probably the only CGI in Raiders and Holy Grail is like the boulder coming down the thing and a couple of different.
Boulder's real.
The boulder is real.
I mean, there wasn't really. I mean, obviously there was some like very basic like computer graphics at that time. Obviously,
Sure.
Star Wars had come out, but no, the boulder's real.
Yeah, and so you don't need the amount of computer graphics we got. Also, and I know that they basically invented that punch sound for Indiana Jones. I felt like it was louder and overused in Crystal Skull. Like I feel like they forgot a lot of what made Indiana Jones great, and it was like the simplicity that an archaeologist who wasn't a superhero was looking for a religious relic to put in a museum, and what we got was like more of an action movie with like. Maybe it wasn't per se the Crystal Skull. I mean, I'm just such like not a space alien kind of person, whatever.
Sure.
But what we got was him fighting off so many like sci-fi weird things that it just became. They turned Indiana Jones into a superhero of sorts. And what we have in Indiana Jones, especially I think in Raiders and in Last Crusade, and listen, is Temple of Doom my third favorite? Yes, and by far. But like he got in fistfights, and that was pretty much his only, you know, and it was almost like Domino and Deadpool. He got lucky with the motorcycle race in Last Crusade, and he got, you know, whenever he kind of fell into something, it was more he used his brains and not his brawn.
Right.
And in this one, in Crystal Skull, it was like he didn't have a chance to use his brains because he was just being attacked by the weirdest, most outrageous villains that they had.
I don't 100% disagree with you. I think, and I went on Ed Greer's podcast, the Nerd Goat podcast, talking about Indiana Jones and as my greatest of all time, because I think what Indiana Jones does that a lot of other like heroes are afraid to do is Indiana Jones fails a lot.
Yes.
Almost every beginning of an Indiana Jones movie is him failing to get something.
Totally.
Or getting his ass worked.
Yeah. Jumping in a plane with a snake while Indians are chasing you with the blow darts and
right,
stuff.
yeah.
I mean,
and then he ends up not even getting that thing.
He doesn't get the idol.
Right. How ballsy is it of that movie to have your protagonist that you're going to follow for the next 2 hours lose his very first time you meet him? That's great. And that's why we love him, because when he does win, it feels like us winning, because it's like, that's probably...
He loses the Cross of Coronado at the beginning, and then he gets it back on the boat. I mean,
right?
You're right. The redemption story of Indiana Jones is his best quality, right? At any turn. It's the tank chase scene... I don't want to exactly call it a chase, I guess, but the tank in the valley scene in Last Crusade is one of the best shot action sequences you'll ever see in a movie. And I think it's because it's so believable, right? He's on that thing and it's like scraping against the wall, and there's just so many things that work so well in that sequence. And I don't think we had a believable action sequence in the whole movie. Every time they tried to, they made it so CGI'd unbelievable that you took away from the fact that Indiana Jones lucks into success.
I mean, again, this is where I say I agree and I disagree. So I agree that actually probably the first 40 minutes of this movie, Harrison Ford feels reserved almost, compared to like the last half, to me, feels like he's back as Indy.
Right.
And that first half doesn't. And I kind of feel like usually, you know, we say we start the movie where he's failed. And again, he's already been captured. He's already quote unquote failed. But I kind of feel like, and this is why I like the movies, like you can't dance around the fact that this guy was like 60 plus.
I know.
Yeah, almost 70 at the time of doing this. And I feel like we see Indiana Jones, and he can't quite be the Indy he used to be. And there's that great scene where he's just sitting in his desk and he's slumped over and he sees the two people he cared about the most, his dad and Marcus, are gone. It's like, what am I even doing here?
Right.
And I really like the emotion. And I feel like for me, and maybe that's my mind kind of like connecting things that aren't there, but that's why I feel like it's okay for him to not be like, you know, like... Da, 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 right off the bat, because he's not the Indiana Jones. And I think that's the whole point of the movie is with Marion back, and now he sees that he does have a son. Like maybe it almost brings him back to life a little bit, you know?
Do you blame some of this on Shia LaBeouf? Because I know that a lot of people have problems with him as an actor or whatever, but I've always liked him in things.
I think this movie was the start of people
doubting.
And just like making him the butt of a joke that didn't need to be. Like it was like Shia LaBeouf, roll eyes. It's like, okay, well, what are you basing this off of? Because if you actually look, like he has some of the best acting in this whole movie. Does he get saddled with some terrible dialogue? Yeah. Have you ever watched a movie that George Lucas has been attached to? But does he also have some of the best reaction shots? Absolutely. Look when they go to the cell that Oxley was supposed to be in, that he escaped from, and there's all the writing in the wall, and he starts to tear up a little bit, like, Ox, what happened to you? This was the man that raised him.
Right.
To him, this is his father figure, and he shows like this real pain and like worry over this man that no one else to that point in the movie has shown that kind of emotion. Like, how can you doubt that, you know?
No, I'm with you on that one. I just, you know, I wanted to like this movie so much that I gave it so many different passes at it. You know what I mean? And each time it just felt like, listen, Indiana Jones, you make a great point of like it not being super realistic, right? Man reaching into it. No, right? You know, it just felt like the lack of practical effects took me out of the
Sure.
movie every time, and that the ending was so fantastical, right? That there was like, it just felt like, the spaceship aspect of the whole thing was like, really, this is where we're going, right? Like, the whole aspect of like space creatures coming down from something just isn't my Indiana Jones.
I guess to me, because it's like, yes, that is asking your audience to take a massive leap forward with you.
Yes.
That being said, to my brain, it's like, is it as ridiculous as going down in a cave on an invisible bridge to find a man who's been sitting down there for 2,000 years waiting for someone to come? Is it, if I'm putting it on a scale?
What does that guy do? Yeah.
In that moment, I'm like, oh, they've kind of been prepping me each movie that this is just going to get more and more outlandish.
Yeah.
Like when you think back to the first one, the only like super ridiculous, or not ridiculous, but the supernatural thing is the opening the Ark of the Covenant. That's just one little aspect. The second one, they go a little bit deeper. It's like, okay, now there's a cult and they can take your beating hearts out and all this other like magical, mystical stuff. You're like, okay,
there's a volcano at the base
Right.
of this temple.
So by the third one, when we get to a point where it's like you have to take a leap of faith and walk on the invisible bridge, you're like, all right, that tracks. So when I get to part 4, I've already been groomed to accept that this stuff is like campy and out there. Like, that's why to me I was like, all right, I guess that's where we're going next.
Do you think that of the 4, so I'm putting these in the end, do you think that Crystal Skull has like the lamest effects? Like the lamest action sequences of them all? Like, what if you were to take this movie, right, which you enjoy, and you were to pick out like your 3 moments that you just did not like, what would it be?
The swinging monkeys, I feel like, is pretty bad.
Yes.
It does not track.
The scarabs for me don't track, but that's...
the fire ants?
Yes. Yeah, they're fire ants or whatever.
Yeah. You're saying like them building on top of each other?
Yeah.
It's hokey, but it's also like all this
it just
stuff
feels
is,
it almost
schlocky.
looked like the spiders in the first Jumanji, where they were just
tick, 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 well, I think part of the problem too is, and I'll have to fact check myself later. I wish I would have looked this up first, but I don't believe the cinematographer that had done the other 3 films was either alive or available.
Okay,
it's definitely a different cinematographer.
Totally.
So when you watch these, it doesn't have the aesthetic continuity that you're used to.
Totally.
So frame 1. You have to readjust.
Yeah, 100%.
The color timing is different.
Yeah.
Even the way that he would frame shots is different.
And maybe that is part of going back to what I said was, 20 years later, a sequel to or a continuation of a movie is because technology is so different and the way we shoot movies is so different that it is... That is the most jarring thing of it all, is that it seems too polished to be my Indiana Jones movies.
And that's a totally fair assumption. And part of me wonders, like, do I give this movie more of a pass because this was the first Indiana Jones that I was able to see in a theater? Mm-hmm. Possibly. Who knows? But I also think, look, I think as cool of a sequence as it is, I do think that like the big blade in the jungle bit is like, it's cool. Maybe it's not the most Indiana Jones thing.
Yes,
that seems like something that would be in like the Battle of Geonosis.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it. I actually think like once they get to that point of the movie, it's like nonstop thrills for me. I love the waterfall.
The waterfall's pretty fun.
That's pretty fun. I love just like they just go fast and furious with all the, not the franchise, like literally the exclamations of the adjectives of just like all the little tropey things once they get to the tunnel. It's like the sand, these bricks have to be moved. And then there's the spiral case. Yeah. And then there's the warriors that come out. Like that all to me is just like nonstop fun.
It is. It's fun. I'm not disagreeing with you on that one. It just feels like it's sort of like, I think that Iron Man 3 is a good Shane Black movie. I don't think it's a good Marvel movie. That's like taking a page from Christian Harloff, and I kind of agree with that, right? I feel like this would be a very fun movie if it was per se like a different Explorer, or it was not an Indiana Jones movie. Right? Because in the original trilogy, there's only really like maybe 2 or 3 fantastical things that happen. So in the first one, it's walking through the cave at the beginning with the boulder charge, and you're like swinging over the pit and getting through, and then getting chased into the plane. And then you've got, the ghosts coming and the angels coming out and melting everybody's faces, and the submarine thing, right? Yeah. Those are your fantastical things. In Temple of Doom, it's running at the beginning with the moving symbol and like the shooting in the machine gun, jumping down. Then, like you said, the raft out of the plane, landing on the snow, and then sliding down, then falling another 1,000 feet into a river. When we're all pretty sure that unless they were perfectly weighted, the thing would have flipped over immediately. Absolutely. They would have been dead. And then the heart ripping and like lowering that metal cage into lava and then being able to pull a metal cage out. I'm sorry, that's not how physics works. Metal would have melted. That's what molten is. So you had your 3 fantastical things, and then in Last Crusade, it's the penitent man will pass the invisible bridge, walking on that thing. It's the maybe the fantastical things in Last Crusade is the airplane fighting it. I guess it's the old man. It's the old man that's been there for 1,000 years.
Thousands of years.
So you have maybe there were just too many fantastical things in Crystal Skull where they thought they had to inundate us with fantastical, when a lot of Indiana Jones fun is the actual just sequence of events to get to our base Indiana Jones. It's escaping via the common man. And I think a lot of stuff in Crystal Skull he's an uncommon man now. He's no longer an archaeologist, where now he's in his mid-60s, and if anything, he should be more of the common man than that he was in Last Crusade and Temple of Doom.
Yeah, look, and like I said at the top, I don't think this movie's perfect. There's stuff in this movie that does bother me. I think one of my things that I will happily admit, I feel like there's a lot of sequences that feel and look like it was shot on a soundstage.
Yeah.
Where, a lot of the stuff when Indy's captured and he falls in the quicksand, that all feels like it's on the Fox backlot. Mm-hmm. And that feels like a little it feels a little bit more confined than maybe Raiders and Last Crusade, whereas Temple of Doom is pretty.
Yeah, Temple of Doom's pretty confined.
That's the outlier. But this one, even though we're going around the world and we get the map and everything, it still feels a little claustrophobic in the middle in the second act.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. That being said, you talk about the everyman. I love old man Indiana Jones on the back of a motorcycle with this kid going 1,000 miles per hour through a college. That's a cool chase.
I dig that.
Sequences.
Yeah. I think that, hindsight being 2020 is if you're maybe when you're shooting Indiana Jones in the Crystal Skull and you're thinking to yourself, because there's so many CGI things that they have to add in post, then maybe they thought they were shooting something that was a lot different. And then they added in the CGI, and they're like, well, I don't know, this might be a little much. But then it was kind of too late because they'd already spent all the money on the CGI.
Well, there was just some that look. I don't think there's some that I agree with. Why do you need the little groundhog or whatever that pops up at the beginning? Do I think it's dumb? Yeah, it's dumb. Does it ruin the movie for me? No. I didn't look at that in the first 5 minutes and think, oh, we're in trouble. I was just okay. I also think that this was a movie, and you said it earlier, this came out 19 years after the last one. This movie, and I say this a lot on this show because I feel like a lot of movies suffer from this. This movie is a victim of expectations.
Totally.
This movie was never going to be as good as the movie that we all wrote in our heads of what would be the next thing. And that's why it's I think if this movie had come out and it was Explorer Rick and his family friends, this would be hey man, did you see this really cool action movie?
Did you ever seen the Explorer Rick movie? It's pretty dope.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But because you put Indiana Jones on it, I think it wasn't the movie that you wrote one in your head.
Totally.
I know you did.
Well, it's you meet, let's just say, I go to the Bad Boys 3 premiere, right?
Sure.
And I get the chance to meet Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, and they're just assholes to me.
Right.
That's how I would feel. That's how I kind of felt with Indiana Jones, with which I went and like, this is my hero. These are my movies. This is it. I was so excited. And then I felt like they were kind of mean to me. Like they just let me down. Right? Like my dad promised to come to my baseball game, and then he sent my stepdad, who's now dating my mom. It's just,
and he films it on his Sony Handycam.
Come on, Josh, shut up, Derek. So I felt like I was. You're right, a victim of expectation, 100%. And I know that's going to be Bad Boys 3 for me. I was. I don't want to say that I was like heartbroken, even though I kind of was. Mm-hmm. I was just like so bummed out because I was, I just wanted to watch The Last Crusade. I should have just gone to Last Crusade in the theaters. That's what I just should have done. And maybe I should watch Crystal Skull again and see if I can just put away my expectations and see if I can enjoy this movie for what it is.
I just feel like too, and look, I'm not trying to say at all that you didn't walk out of this like heartbroken. Mm-hmm. I 100% buy it. But I do feel like there was a time, let's call it a solid 5 or 6 months. People watched it. They were like, yeah, that was great. Or like, yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's fine.
And then they didn't talk about it. It was just, and then all of a sudden, I feel like there was a meeting that I was not invited to where we decided like this was the worst thing ever.
I think it's called the internet.
Yeah. It just started making these like worst sequel lists. It's like, back up. You can not like this movie. That's fine. But worst sequel list?
I saw it up there with like Caddyshack 2 and Major League 2. And I was like, no, that's
pump the brakes a
ease
second.
up on the clutch a little bit. My goodness.
Yeah. This was, look, maybe it wasn't a home run, but it was a solid ground rule double.
Yeah.
You know? and
it was like a leadoff double.
Right. And it was like for an Indiana Jones fan, it's like home run or nothing. I get it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I feel like this is a movie where it's like, even you said, you're like, I get PTSD. I don't want to watch it. If I see it, I flip right past it. And it's like, I wonder how much of that, because I feel like a lot of people are in your same situation. Like, how many people have just decided like it's the worst thing ever, and maybe if you saw it again you'd still not like it, but you'd be like, okay, it's not what the internet or what we've socially decided this movie is.
Yeah, no, I think we all got into, let's just say, with the schmoes, and we were all talking movies early on, and people started being like, oh, this was terrible, that was terrible. Everybody likes to hate on stuff and everything. Right. And then I was the one that came around. I was like, I just really never liked the Crystal Skull, and I loved the original trilogy so much that I didn't like that one so much that it spoiled me. And I was like, oh yeah, everybody knows that. And I was like, really? I didn't know that was an everybody thing, because I walked out of it with my buddy. My own buddy was like, it wasn't too bad. My other buddy was like, I mean, it was pretty fun. And I was like, did we watch the same movie? Right. And I feel like that's what the Rotten Tomato score reflects. That's the situation. And now that and since then, and like a lot of these big time follow-ups that are years and years later, unless you're a Star Wars movie and you're immune to everything,
right?
You get that, well, this was a failure. And like you said before we even started recording, this thing made 800 some million worldwide. I mean, It did really friggin' well at the box office, and in such a busy summer that this kicked it off. But because it was greeted with such vitriol from fans, and later, yeah,
I feel like this is like, the vitriol didn't I honestly think it started with that South Park episode, which came like 5 or 6 months later, which really, by the way, I'm pretty sure that was also like the birthplace of the rape my childhood kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
leave it to South Park to do that.
Of course. Worldwide, this thing made $786 million.
That's huge.
And of the Indiana Jones series, now, granted, it's not adjusted for inflation, but it's the top grossing one.
Sure.
Yeah, I just would never think walking out of this that it was the third highest grossing movie that year, behind Dark Knight and Iron Man. Like, it's in good company.
Yeah.
That means that people saw it multiple times.
Yeah.
They went back, they took people. I saw it 3 times in theaters.
Did you really?
I really enjoyed it.
Wow. Do you think that, though, because it was a victim of like, back end vitriol hatred situation, that it didn't get another movie based on solely that? Or do you think it's because Harrison Ford, Spielberg, and George Lucas just said, I don't know if I really want to do another indie?
I mean, Harrison Ford to be fair, said in 1994 when they did that Young Indiana Jones movie, he's like, hey, I kind of want to do another one. And Lucas was like, yeah, I want to do this one like 50s and aliens. And Harrison Ford's like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Right. And then he did Cowboys and Aliens.
Right. Harrison Ford was not on board with this idea initially. I'm not 100% sure how he came back around.
Did he read the check?
Maybe. Although Harrison, like, a lot of people
He's
say
a
that.
millionaire at that point.
A lot of people say, like, oh, Robert Downey Jr., you're doing it for the money. I'm like, he would have stopped. There's only so much money a person can spend at a certain point. Like,
he's not doing it for the money.
Sure, I'll take it. But
sure.
It's yeah. Like, I genuinely think Indiana Jones is special to Harrison Ford. The way that he talks about that character in interviews, definitely, I think he's much more fond of it than Han Solo.
I agree.
Yeah.
Do you think, and this is off Crystal Skull, but do you think that, because I said it on Collider Live and I will stand by it, I don't think that you make more Indiana Jones movies with another Indiana Jones. I think if anything, one, maybe you just end the franchise with Harrison Ford, because I liked the Solo movie, but I liked it because I just ignored the fact that this guy was playing Han Solo. I liked it because it was a cool space heist movie, right? I liked the fact that all these characters, it was a cool heist movie, Han Solo was. I think that if you do yourself a disservice by saying this guy's name is also Indiana Jones. I think that you end Indiana Jones and maybe you the son like a Shia LaBeouf, but I don't know if you'd ever want to do it. I mean, I know Chris Pratt, they've talked about him, but I think you just start another franchise with a guy that is somehow related to him or was a protege or, was recommended to him or worked with Indiana, like a former student, whatever the case may be, because cursing somebody or like putting that mantle on somebody to be Indiana Jones again, I think you're selling somebody short. I think you just end the franchise, or you do like an awesome Disney Plus series with some kind of a spin-off of Indiana Jones. And again, I don't think it's Indiana Jones.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I think that you brought up some good points, but I also think if that was the case, we would have had 6 James Bond movies, and then we would have called it a day.
That was the argument that somebody else threw.
We would have had 2 Batman movies, and we would have called it a day. I think that if a character is strong enough, granted, Harrison Ford brings so much. He brings everything to Indiana Jones. But I think the idea of what Indiana Jones is, he's this guy who's a teacher who just falls ass backwards into adventure and sometimes just barely gets what he wants and barely gets out alive. That's a pretty universal character that I can see other characteristics by another actor being brought in. Do I think that a lot of Indiana Jones's history has been mined already? Yep, young Indiana Jones. Do a lot of people remember it? Not really.
Right.
So do I think another actor could do it? I think so. I do think, though, you have to approach it like a James Bond, and you have to bring a new interpretation. Okay. And that's where I'm with you. I actually really enjoy Solo a lot. But I think you're right. Like, he didn't try to be Harrison Ford and do like a bad impression. Yeah. He was this own guy, and nothing that he did conflicts with what we see with Han Solo later. It doesn't create some sort of like, he wouldn't do that. It's like, I think that you get a younger guy who could do some adventures, some of those earlier adventures. There's a ton of novels that you could adapt. And you get a guy who's close enough that can bring some of his own characteristics, but it doesn't feel like a complete left field. And eventually, I think people would come around, because I think the concept of Indiana Jones is bigger than any one person.
Yeah, okay.
For me.
Yeah.
Look, box office obviously proved me wrong on Solo, so it could just be this is uncastable, but I just find it strange that people will accept, like, I didn't live in this generation, but Sean Connery was James Bond.
Yeah.
So the idea of Roger Moore coming in and having to do it, I'm sure would have been the same thing. Like, you can't do that, but they did, and they did a lot of them.
I mean, the James Bond point is very well manicured.
Sure.
I'm not going to argue that. I just, for some reason, I'm so protective of Indiana Jones, and
I get it.
Yeah.
You
know what I mean?
It's just like, I guess for me, I love the character so much that I would be okay opening the sandbox and enjoying. It's like, again, it goes all the way back to what I said at the beginning. It's like, this doesn't mean that the movies of Indiana Jones that I like are going away. It doesn't mean that I if I don't like it, then okay, that one's not for me.
How do you feel about a female indie?
Don't call it Indiana Jones if that's the case.
Okay.
Like I've never been a fan of like the let's stunt, gender swap or whatever. I think you can do. I also just like, this is tough because I don't know how it would work in that time period because things were very different.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe I'm totally freaking wrong. I think if someone can come in and knock it out of the park. But then again, it's like you'd have to James Bond it, like totally James Bond it then. And like a lot of the history is retcon because I think what makes it Indy so great, and especially that in Last Crusade, is that relationship with his father.
Yeah. And
I think father-daughter and father-son relationships are so different that you lose a big chunk of what makes Indiana Jones, which is like his name is literally like rebellious towards his dad. It's like we named the dog Indiana, loser.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
So it's like you'd have to do some jumping jacks and some Cirque du Soleil bends to make it work.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of where I land on. I don't know.
No, I'm so, when I start thinking about Indiana Jones and discussing Indiana Jones, it is a passion.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I was saying a while ago that, Han Solo and Indiana Jones with a different actor at the helm could have been the same person who just been like, oh, he's just Han Soloing in Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford brought different life to both Han Solo and Indiana Jones. I think that, what we've said is he falls back asswards. He gets awesome clues. He has the right people. I think the scope of the world always seems so much bigger with Indy. In Last Crusade when they end up in Morocco or in Alexandretta, whatever.
Right.
In Raiders when they end up in Tibet and all that kind of stuff. The way he's able to traverse the world at that time seems so much bigger, bigger in scope than anything that Crystal Skull did. Do you know what I'm saying?
And again, I agree with you. I think that's kind of what I mean by like it feels a little claustrophobic at times. I think they try to widen it at the end, but even like we get this big expansive like temple, but then once we get inside it again, I'm on the backlot of the Universal.
Right.
I personally think if you're going to keep going with Indiana Jones, and I'm kind of shocked that this hasn't happened. We've had how many Star Wars amazing animated series.
Yeah.
And we've had zero Indiana Jones anything
Totally.
since the Disney acquisition.
Totally.
And I was saying to you, I'm just shocked that they have these big Marvel brands. They have Star Wars, Lucasfilm.
DC's got them. I mean,
and they
everything.
just do not exploit Indiana Jones at all. And now you've gotten to a point where it's like, I feel like there's a whole generation that is now not grown up completely, but they've grown up without 11 years since it came out. There are kids in 6th, 7th grade that they don't really know who Indiana Jones is.
No idea. And because it didn't have the same splash that the original did, that it's... a total generation of people that have no idea who Indy is. But one of those animated shows that looks like a Star Wars Rebels would be great.
And that way you can retain the like Harrison Ford aesthetic. I don't think you get him to voice it, but you get something that's kind of close. And then it also fulfills the need of like, it's half like indie adventure and it's a little bit educational, and then you put it on Disney Plus.
I agree.
Like
it's almost like Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah, and it's never ending.
No.
And you never have to worry about Indy getting older because it's animated. You can do all these crazy adventures.
And you teach kids really early on that Nazis are bad so that we don't grow up to see more.
Punching Nazis are awesome.
Yes.
But yeah, I was even saying like go to Disneyland, and it used to be across the way from the ride. There was a whole store of cool indie stuff, and now it's just like one little section of indie stuff and a bunch of like Lion King.
My dad
stuff.
still has an indie hat that he wears.
Yeah,
in the wintertime. It's awesome. I know my bullwhip is still at home. I had this awesome leather jacket that was indie style for a while. Okay, I'll give you all the movies, whatever. A couple like rapid fire questions. Best action sequence from any of them. I'll give you like like a long sequence, like 5 to 8 minutes, kind of a situation.
I'm gonna say the fight, the fist fight with the plane, and then the guy gets hit with the propeller.
Awesome scene.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was so intimidating.
Right?
That
And
giant bald man.
I love that Harrison Ford. It's a podcast. You can't see me do it, but he's just like,
yeah.
all right, here we go. I love that about Indy, that he's like, I don't want to fight, not because of any moral thing. It's because I'm effing tired.
Yeah, and this guy's going to kick the crap out of me. And that
Yeah.
explosion sequence from the gasoline afterwards, that's awesome.
It's
that's
amazing.
so cool.
That's a great sequence and a great fight.
Favorite female moment in Indy?
I have to say... Female meaning like a female action moment, or a female just like...
Any kind of moment that it could be with Indy, it could be with somebody else, whatever.
I have two. I really like the cat and mouse type of game where she's hiding in the thing and she's like, Indy, and you can't find the thing.
Yes.
And then I actually it indirectly involves a woman, but it's just so funny to me when both Sean Connery and Harrison Ford realize that they both slept with the same woman.
That's an amazing scene.
It's just really funny.
Totally.
Yeah.
Favorite moment with the hat?
In a movie I don't necessarily love, I like it when he last minute grabs it in Temple of Doom.
Yeah, out of the spiky thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Love it. Best whip moment?
I don't know. Do you have a best whip moment?
I think in Last Crusade, when he's in the Nazi hotel and he whips it on the power line and he swings in, breaks through the window, and his dad bashes him on the head with the pot.
Oh, that is a great moment.
Yeah,
I can tell you my least favorite whip moment, which is Crystal Skull. The first time he uses it, and it looks like he's just like, wait a minute, wait a second. And he just barely moves his hand, and it's
Yeah.
I'm like, but then again, 2 minutes later, I think it's hysterical that you think you're going to get this great hero shot of him swinging down, running to catch the truck. And he's like, didn't measure that right. Like, I think that's great. That's classic Indy.
Yeah. Best chase scene in a moving, like an automobile, motorcycle, whatever.
For me, I don't think you can beat the one from Raiders where it's like, what are you going to do? I don't know, making this up as I go along. That whole next sequence where he's chasing after the Ark is
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And favorite villain?
Um,
And you can go small villains. Like you could go bald guy that he fights in the plane.
I actually think, why am I blanking on his name? But it's Hello, Fraulein. And he has
with the thing.
the burnt hand.
I don't even know that guy's name either.
And the weird coat hanger thing that, he keeps doing that everyone thinks is a gun.
Yeah.
I don't know, that guy is just, it's like Tout, T-A-U-T or something like that.
He's and he looks like he's the most Nazi looking dude in all of the Indiana Jones movies.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
He's the scariest one. Yeah, it's something like Tout or Toot or I don't know.
I'd take away Crystal Skull. Least believable moment in the original trilogy.
Indiana Jones falling in love with Willie Scott. It's so out of character from like both the women that we see him with, Karen Allen, and then later with Alison Doody in Last Crusade. It's like Indy wants someone who he kind of has to, I don't want to say chase, but is like his
intellectual equal,
like aggressive equal.
Totally.
And to see him like take and don't give me this BS like, oh, it's a prequel. It's like, it was 1 year earlier. Like, give me a break here.
Totally.
It's like to see him take that big step back and just like, well, I guess I could bang this chick. Like, she is just terrible. I really, really dislike that character.
I'm with you. I was never a fan of Willie. Final question. Could you or anyone survive the chopping of the rope bridge in Temple of Doom?
No, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm afraid of heights, so I'd never be up there. Okay. I've never left the United States because I'm afraid of being kidnapped or getting a disease. Okay. So I would never be there in the first place.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. I just remember as a kid watching Temple of Doom, like they're eating the monkey brains and the snakes and we're thinking it's gross. And then we get to that part and my dad just going, come on. Like real subtle, like, come on.
That's how I feel about Nuke the Fridge.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine you're just doing an indie marathon with Josh's dad, and at that point, after 6.5 hours, you're just like, come on, guys.
Yeah. It's 100%. Come on.
Yeah, I will say, look, to just kind of tie it all up and bring it back, I think Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a decent, good Indiana Jones movie. I think it's a great action movie with no Indiana Jones association. For me, it's 3 out of 4 on the rankings. It goes Raiders, Last Crusade, Crystal Skull, Temple of Doom.
Interesting.
Temple of Doom. All that
Temple of Doo-Doo.
Temple of Doo-Doo. All that to say, and I say this about my least favorite Marvel movie. I say this about my least favorite Star, which is Iron Man 3.
Okay. With you on that one.
I say this about my least favorite Star Wars movie, which is Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
I still think a bad Indiana Jones movie is still a good movie.
It's fun.
I'll watch a bad Indiana Jones movie before I'll watch, I don't know, the newest
Roma?
Tiffany Haddish movie, because she's in one every week now.
Yeah, playing the exact same character every time. No, I'm with you on that. I would put it number 4 because I don't hate Temple of Doom as much as you do, or let's just say dislike. But I will say that as the interest grows, that each year that goes by and we don't have an Indiana Jones movie, the more intrigued I am of what they do with the franchise.
I honestly, I don't think they should do 5, and I know they keep moving the date and they've announced it. I wouldn't be shocked and I wouldn't be heartbroken if they're like, never mind, this it's just not coming.
Right.
I can live with the ending of Crystal Skull. He's married. He's happy now. They faked us out. They thought it was going to be Mutt, and then they're like, nah, there's only one Dr. Jones, and I'm okay with that.
I'm with you.
There's enough Indiana Jones media out there to like
Keep us all happy forever.
Yeah. I want more.
Sure.
I'm greedy. I want more, but I want that animated series.
I would love to see a TV show. I love that in Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. I got to go back and watch that. Sean Patrick Flannery.
Yeah, I got to know very well in the con circuit. He's a really cool dude.
That's awesome.
I also want like a great, but a great Indiana Jones video game, because they still haven't given me like the one. There were some real close ones. I liked that N64 one, but it wasn't great.
There is a very funny YouTube video, and you go whatever. It's is Indiana Jones Castlevania. Because he's got the whip and he's constantly searching for relics, and there's vampires and all that kind of stuff, and he's in a castle. But for the most part, he's searching, like hunting down religious relics while traversing a castle, and he's got a whip. Yeah. It's like one of those super nerd out things, but I would love to see a series. I'd love to see another movie. I would love to see maybe just a freshen up of the franchise, make it a little bit younger if they did it. If the movie opened with like on the grave of Indiana Jones or something like that, and there was some lost manuscript they find in his office, or maybe they're one of the guys takes over his classroom at the university, and he's got all these books and lost scrolls and something, and each episode or each new movie is him like finding a new scroll or like a secret compartment that Indy had that nobody knew the combination to, whatever. Yeah.
I'm gonna be a hypocrite, and I'm gonna walk back something I said, because something I say about Star Wars all the time, and I've said about Batman. I think the minute that we take complete ownership of these characters that we love, and we don't want them to grow, to evolve, to try something different, is the minute they become stale, and that we don't really love them as much anymore. And I think I think that's why Batman and some of these other characters have endured for so long, is because we reinvent them. So I'm going to walk back what I said. Give me a female Indiana Jones. Let's see what happens.
Sure.
I think the more that we can be malleable with these characters that we love, the more that we can evolve them, realizing that the stuff that you love is still going to be there for you, and just opening up to, if it's not for you, that's okay. For Star Wars, my niece loves the Clone Wars cartoon. That's not my favorite, but she loves it. That's her Star Wars.
Yeah.
My Star Wars is the OG trilogy.
Yeah.
Her Star Wars is a cartoon. Ahsoka is like, that is Star Wars.
That's her big thing.
And that's why Star Wars is going to live forever. Yeah. Indiana Jones isn't there yet, because we're all just like, well, you got to do it before Harrison dies. You got to do Harrison. It's got to be Harrison. It's like, and now I'm getting to the point in my
80.
fandom. Yeah. I'm just like,
My dad can't be Indiana Jones. He's 71.
I'm 32 and pushing.
I'm just like, oh, my knee hurts. Come on, guys.
But I want Indiana Jones to be on that same level, and I think we have to, as like the hardcores, relinquish a little bit of our old get off my lawn ways and let this character live, so that it doesn't become something that kids are going to be like, what's that?
Yeah, totally.
That's where I land on it.
I'm with you.
Yeah, well, Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I don't think I won anyone over, but I like that we can finally hash out why we don't.
I think it was just a really nice, healthy conversation about Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And our love for the man.
Those are in short supply these days.
They sure are.
Coming up next week, now this is one that I already recorded, and then the file got lost, but he's so gracious that he's coming back. That's right. Your co-host, your partner, Ken Knapsack.
Love it.
We're talking Rogue One. That is
My favorite Star Wars movie.
I don't dig it, and I was really harsh on it the first time he was here.
Interesting.
And I've softened a little bit, so I want to go back because I feel like I was just like, "Why is it like this, Ken? Why did this happen, Ken?" And I think he threw up his hands. He's like, "I don't know, man. I didn't make it." So I'm happy to revisit the topic again.
I think what we learned here today is that in this world where people want to argue to prove that they can win, you and I have come to an agreement that through discussion, we can both find our love for a movie that maybe I didn't like originally, but other people do, and we can discuss it and enjoy the discussion on something that is enjoyable to discuss.
That is the whole point of why I pay $50 a month to host this podcast, is because if I can just get one person to have a decent discussion, we're there. Josh, if people listen to this and for some reason don't know where to find you, where can they find you?
At Josh Macuga, Twitter and Instagram. I post everything there. You guys can see the Josh Macuga Show on YouTube, the afternoons with Josh and myself and Ken Knapsack, and I'm on Collider Live every single day on Collider.
You were telling me Collider Live, you guys talked a little bit about Indiana Jones.
We did. It comes up quite often, to be honest with you. Because Christian's a big fan and Mark Riley is a huge Indiana Jones fan, and the discussion of who's the next Indiana Jones, where will it be, kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. Yeah. It's like all of a sudden it's like, well, I mean Indiana Jones, and then it goes into the indie discussion.
As it should.
Yes.
As it should.
Yes.
We need more Indiana Jones talk.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys next week.